Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. Why am I talking so fast? You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger, of course. Today I wanted to start off, first of all, hopefully everybody listening is doing well. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. It seems like every other week I'm on here talking about how we're dealing with another tropical storm or a hurricane or a tropical depression, and it's no different this week. Right now, tropical depression... Well, it was a tropical storm Beta. We've moved into the Greek alphabet now. Tropical storm Beta has formed off the coast in the Gulf of Mexico. It's very slow moving right now. It has moved ashore here in Texas, just south of Houston. It is a tropical depression at this point. All that means is the winds have really died down a bit, but it's still bringing us plenty of rain, and that's always the concern with these things. Is the rain. And we here in Houston and other parts of the state of Texas on the coast are still quite gun shy when it comes to rain because Hurricane Harvey was not that long ago. So anytime we have any prolonged rain here in Houston, we all bite our nails and get a little bit antsy. But other than some localized flooding, localized impacts, really, the rain has been plentiful, well over a foot of rain in some areas, but it's been, compared to Harvey and other storms, it's been quite manageable on the whole. I know that if for some reason you're listening to this in a part of Houston where you did have some flooding issues in your house or around your house, it's kind of, these words may have more impact on you, but by and large, for the whole city of the area of about 7 million people, this is nothing like Harvey. The rain has been manageable. We've been getting a lot of rain, but again, it has been manageable. The rain bands come through and we get heavy rainfall for several minutes at a time, maybe 30 minutes at a time, and then the band moves through and it clears out and that rain has time to drain away. So right now, that's the situation. Just bringing my international listeners up to speed, and those of you elsewhere around the country, that's what we're dealing with. And I'm based here in Houston, and during hurricane and tropical storm season, that's what we do here in South Texas, is go from storm to storm. Is this one going to hit us? Is that one going to escape us? The whole Gulf Coast region. So tropical storm, or tropical depression at this point, Beta, is a rainmaker, but it's been mostly manageable, and hopefully that continues for the next few days as it clears on out of here. So let's move on to the meat and potatoes. There's a couple of meats and potatoes of this podcast. I want to talk about how I'm in the hunt for a tablet and for a smartwatch for my wife. We'll move on to that. But first, I want to start off with a neat story, a funny story here that I came across on Ars Technica, because I saw that Clint from Lazy Game Reviews, and if you follow my Twitter account, you saw me post this. Clint has an article about himself on Ars Technica. They interviewed him, and they did a deep dive through his channel for his most popular uploads, his most popular comments, most liked comments kind of stuff, and that's huge props. Do you want to know one reason why that's such huge props to Clint? Not that he's not a small channel. Of course he's not a small channel. The other two, this is the third time Ars Technica has done this, and the other two YouTubers that Ars Technica has interviewed and done this style of article with and video with was Mark Plyer and Linus Tech Tips. Those guys have millions upon millions of subscribers, and of course, Lazy Game Reviews, of course, Clint has, what is he up to right now? I know he just went over 1 million recently, 1.4 million. He just went over 1 million recently, so he's accumulating those subscribers. So 1.4 million subs, that's not a small channel, But it's also not Linus Tech Tips, or what is Mark Plyer up to right now? I'm sure if I just type in Mark, it'll come up. Mark Plyer is at almost 27 million subscribers. Linus Tech Tips, where's Linus at right now? Linus is at about 12 million subscribers right now. And then so those are the first two that Ars Technica did this type of article with. A 26 million or so subscriber channel, a 12 million subscriber channel, and then Clint on LGR with 1.4 million subscribers. Like I said, that's a huge it's a huge channel. It's a huge subscribership. If I ever reached 1 million subscribers in my lifetime, that would be quite the accomplishment. I mean, that's an understatement. But LGR is not as well known in pop culture as Linus Tech Tips and Mark Plyer. I will admit I can't recall any Mark Plyer videos I've ever watched. I'm not subscribed to Mark Plyer. But the fact that Ars Technica gave a channel a smaller in reference in relation, a smaller channel in relation to Linus Tech Tips and Mark Plyer, some time, some screen time, some article time is huge. That's a good direction. I wish Ars Technica and other outlets would focus on the quote-unquote smaller channels. Like, I wish they would go after the 8-Bit Guy and after Techmoan and Retro Man Cave and all of those channels that I know a lot of you, and this does not compute. I know a lot of you listening to me right now have found me through those channels because I've had Clint on here. I've had David from 8-Bit Guy on here. I've tried to get Matt from Techmoan. He just doesn't do that type of thing. Much respect to Matt. We talk sometimes, but I haven't had him on the show. I've reached out to Neil, Retro Man Cave. We're still working that out. He's just a very, 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 very busy guy over there at Retro Man Cave. This does not compute. So I hope that Ars Technica and other outlets reach out to the retro computing community a bit more on YouTube. And I thought to myself, there was a good description. There was a comment on Ars Technica. Let me quiet my laptop down here a little bit. I've got Microsoft Flight Simulator running in the background. Let me go to the main menu so it's not just screaming at me in the background there. I saw a comment on Clint's Ars article. I didn't plan on spending so much time on this, but a comment perfectly kind of summed up why we love LGR. Not that we don't love other channels, but LGR in particular in this instance. It's because Clint, as you know, as you've heard on the show, you know, he doesn't overly romanticize retro tech. He's not somebody, not that 8-Bit Guy or Techmoan or anybody like that is like this, but he doesn't get up there and he doesn't put up a video saying that this 386 computer was perfect and this is the way it still should be. No. It's one thing to, and I think that's a confusing thing for a lot of people, that when they hear, oh, you're into retro technology, that means, you know, it must think you're stuck in the past and you think that the ways we did in the past was better. Not at all. I don't think if you put a gun to, well, maybe that's an extreme example. I don't think that you could pay us enough. Those of us who love retro tech, if you said, okay, now you only have to use a 386 computer or an 8-bit computer for a year to do everything you need to do, you couldn't pay us enough because we couldn't do, actually, I take that back. It would be an exorbitant amount of money. None of us would willfully put ourselves through that without some, you know, extreme amount of compensation. We're not saying that retro technology was better. There's no way you could use a 386 computer in day-to-day life right now. And if you do have a 386 computer or a 286 or even a 486 or a Pentium, any sort of retro computing like that, most of us have found a happy balance with peripherals and new products that are made for old systems to make the quality of life better when you do use those systems. For instance, SD card readers that emulate floppy drives, the GoTex or the GooTex, whatever you want to call them, SD to IEC drives that emulate the 1541 floppy disk drive for the Commodore 64. makes things so much easier. Load programs on the SD card and put that SD card in the Commodore 64 effectively through the tape drive to the floppy disk port in the back, the serial port there in the back. It just, a quality of life makes it better. In my 286 and my 386, both my compact 286 and 386, I have an IDE to compact flash converter. So I've got my Windows 3.1 installations and DOS 6.22 on a compact flash card, because old hard drives are extremely slow, and given just their age, they're beyond 35, 40 years old at this point, they're unreliable. And for one thing, it's one thing to want that nostalgic experience of using an old hard drive in this example, but then you think, well, I do want this to last, kind of, and if I use it and it malfunctions, or it breaks, or disintegrates, or degrades, then I'm not doing a service to the community. Sooner or later, these old hard drives are just going to be non-existent. They won't exist anymore in any working form or fashion. So in the meantime, we'll use compact flash for now and preserve those old hard drives. It's kind of like old classic cars. Yes, you need to drive them to it's part of maintenance, but you don't want to be using them every single day. I love driving the DeLorean around when I get a chance to, but I wouldn't want to use it anymore as a daily driver if I didn't have to, because it's only going to be original once. You want to keep that mileage just right so that things stay lubricated and it stays maintained properly, but you don't want to be using it every day. And the same thing for moving parts with retro technology and retro computers. You don't exactly want to be daily driving old mechanical hard drive, because it's going to wear out eventually, sooner than later. And when it's gone, it's gone. Maybe there are people out there who can do the meticulous repairs on these things, but why risk it anyways? Compact flash. We use modern technology with old retro computers for an ease of life thing. And all of that to say, that's how Clint thinks. I know that's how Clint thinks. We've talked about it. That's the same way 8-Bit Guy thinks. Yes, old technology is great, but there are certain new advancements, like adapters, that have come out in the last 5, 10, 20 years that make using these old computers so much better. You get all your nostalgia fix, all the retro fix, but you preserve those old mechanical hard drives, for instance. So the comment on Ars Technica about why the guy liked LGR in particular is that he didn't romanticize the retro tech that much, saying that it was better in the past. We appreciate, Clint appreciates, Colin appreciates, David appreciates, Neil appreciates. We appreciate old technology for what it is. And we do enjoy going down memory lane once in a while. And I do enjoy using retro technology when I can. For instance, I got Microsoft Word for Windows 3.1 on my 386 computer. And I can easily just pop out that compact flash drive and pop it into my monster Ryzen 9 3900X rig and take what I've been working on and on a computer from the early 1990s, late 1980s, and I can pick right back up with the Word document on a modern computer, or email it, or put it in a Dropbox. So there are ways to use retro technology and get your retro fix and your non-distraction on, because when I'm typing something on a 386, it's not like I can just use the same computer to bring up YouTube and get distracted. So there are ways to use retro technology, but we don't romanticize it so much that is all we use. And that's one reason why we love Clint from LGR, and kudos to Clint for making it Ars Technica, and kudos to Ars Technica for featuring a relatively smaller channel, compared to Mark Plyer and Linus Tech Tips. It's awesome that they featured LGR. It's a good direction. I hope Ars Technica does more. So speaking of retro tech, this is a pretty good segue to the first meat and potatoes story, actually. I got this from Ars also, and I'm sure it maybe shows up elsewhere, but it's a funny story. So a town, where was it? I think it was in England, a village it was Wales. Sorry. It was a 400 resident village in Wales that was suffering internet outages for a year and a half, technically 18 months. This village relied, probably still relies, on DSL, which DSL to me is just the devil. It's just the devil internet. I hate DSL internet. I hate relying on internet that comes over a phone line. I despise it. I've never had good experience with it. Never, ever, ever. And it still boggles my mind in modern cities, and I can only speak for the United States, that in modern cities there are areas that still offer DSL. Who in their right mind, if they had the choice, would prefer DSL? Maybe I can understand if it's an extremely low income family and they just can't pay $100 a month or $70 a month for high speed internet, US dollars, and they want to go for a cheap internet connection. Maybe they offer $15 a month for DSL internet over the phone line. It already exists, blah, blah, blah. I understand that part. But as far as somebody saying, I've got the choice between fiber and cable or almost literally anything else, I think I'm going to go with DSL. I can't imagine anyone willfully making that choice unless they just really don't use internet that often and all they want is to stream Netflix in standard 480p resolution, and they don't game because ping on DSL by and large sucks. Anyways, this 400 resident village in Wales, that's all they had and have currently is DSL. And for 18 months, they were suffering outages every single morning, like right on the clock, right around 7, 8 a.m. every morning. They would have an internet outage in the entire village. 400 people without internet, like clockwork, at about 7 a.m. each morning. So the local cable company called Openreach was baffled by this. They kept, this part of the story is also interesting. They kept going out to the village and installing new hardware and installing new wiring, hoping to get these residents, the villagers, their internet service. And it didn't solve the problem. It had no effect on the problem. And my thinking right there in this story is that if you're going out there to install new equipment anyways, and maybe I'm just naive about this, and partly I probably am naive about this. If you're already going out there and making that investment and installing all that new equipment for DSL, why wouldn't you install a better infrastructure out there while you're digging things up, while you're making these improvements? Just say, we're going to switch you to cable now. We're going to run cable or coax at least through the 400-person village. How hard would that be? That may be famous last words. How hard would that be? Just run coax everywhere. Give people a much more stable internet connection. For the love of God, 400 people, 400 village. A lot of you might be thinking, why not just install fiber optic out there? Just install a fiber optic node out there and bring fiber optic. As long as you're updating things, why not? Well, for whatever reason, they didn't do that. They just kept updating the DSL equipment and wires and infrastructure out there. They didn't actually go to a better, more reliable standard. So this company, Openreach, was just scratching their heads, and they were embarrassed that they couldn't figure out what was causing the internet outages like clockwork at around 7 a.m. every morning, until one of them got the bright idea, and this was a bright idea, but I don't understand why they didn't try this sooner. It seems like this instrument should be in every technician's kit when you're dealing with internet service. A spectrum analyzer. Spectrum analyzer, in brief, basically it's a radio antenna, among other things, and it tests what kind of frequencies are moving through the air and what kind of modulation they are and what kind of amplitude they are to see if there's any interference. So, for instance, if you were setting up a wireless mic system at a church or at a venue or at an arena, you bet your bottom dollar the engineers in there have spectrum analyzers, because they want to make sure they're choosing frequencies for those wireless microphones that don't compete with other frequencies, such as TV broadcast frequencies and low bandwidth 5G. Low bandwidth 5G operates around 600 megahertz or so, and a lot of UHF wireless microphone systems, at least in the past, up until very recently, operate around that same kind of 500 megahertz, 700 megahertz-ish frequency spectrum. So yes, You bring in a frequency analyzer, a spectrum analyzer, to see where all the peaks and valleys of frequencies and amplitudes are in that given area. So in that arena, in that church, in that concert hall, whatever. You see what the competing frequencies are so that you can choose microphones that operate on separate frequencies so they don't get that interference from competing signals, whether it be low bandwidth, low spectrum 5G, or competing television stations. I don't know, that's different all around the world, in Europe and in Asia and everywhere, but still, spectrum analyzers are it's a hammer of a lot of technicians' toolkit. So eventually, OpenReach, the company OpenReach, brought in the spectrum analyzer, and they found that a resident, this is so, I was so chuffed when I heard this, that the source of interference was one of the villagers using an old tube TV. They weren't up to date. They didn't have a flat screen TV there. At least they weren't watching it at 7 a.m. in the morning. Maybe the room that they went into at 7 in the morning to eat their breakfast, whatever, the only TV in there was an old tube TV. So he was close enough to whatever node or important piece of the infrastructure there in the village that when he turned on that old TV, and you get the high frequency hiss coming out of the TV, that caused enough interference with the DSL that it knocked out the internet service to the entire village during that time of the morning. Quick side note, and maybe I might have some listeners too young for this to have been noticeable, maybe. But am I the only one, for those of you who are closer to my age, and I'm 37 years old, is anyone else really sensitive to that high frequency pitch that CRTs give off, cathode ray tubes? Those old TVs, when they switch it on, you hear that booey. You can hear it when you first turn it on. I can't replicate it with my mouth because I can't go up to 16 kilohertz with my mouth. But you pull the knob on the TV or press the button if you were fancying at a logic board. But you pull the knob on the TV and the cathode, you'd see it fire up, the dot in the middle, and that expands out to the edges of the TV and goes booey, and it goes really high pitched. It would settle into that high pitch, which is usually around 16 kilohertz or so. So it's a high pitch that a lot of adults can't hear, but a lot of kids can hear. And that's a side discussion on the way how our bones are made up around our ears. But I was and still am particularly sensitive to that frequency range in my ears. So growing up, I grew up in a bigger house. It was 7 people in the house. And I knew whenever there was a TV on in the house, this is way before flat screens, they were all CRT, just tube TVs. So I knew even if I was in the garage, basically, in that way up in the upstairs, like my brother's bedroom or something, if there was a 13-inch TV on, I knew it was on just pulling up to the house, standing outside, basically. I knew that there was a TV on inside the house. It was almost like I could feel it. And it was just that tone that kind of burrowed into my brain, and I could hear it. It's so high of a frequency, it felt like I can feel it. Is anybody else like that? Did anybody else grow up like that or have memories that you knew a TV, the volume of the TV could be all the way down, the TV could be muted, but you knew, even if you were on the other end of the house, you knew that a TV was on in the house because you could feel it. It's like you could feel it in your brain. Am I the only one? If that has happened to you, just let me know some way, geektherapyradio.com, or visit me on the Twitter, Geek Therapy Radio on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Maybe I'm not alone in that. Just let me know. So anyways, back to the story, because it just kind of gets better and better. By the way, as I read more through the article, what is it called? OpenReach? Yeah, OpenReach does plan, actually, as I mentioned it, to update the village to fiber optic. That's coming soon. They will update the village to fiber optic internet. Why they didn't do it, when they're fixing things, I don't know. They probably had to run the cable out there. I understand, but Okay. Anyways, so the end of the story is that they found the resident. They deduced where it was coming from. They found it, and they asked the resident. They told the resident, and as it happens, the resident was, according to the article, mortified. Let me read you to this last little paragraph here. As you can imagine, when we pointed this out to the resident, they were mortified that their old secondhand TV was the cause of an entire village's broadband problems, and they immediately agreed to switch it off and not use it again. End quote. That's funny because we don't know who this is. I in my mind, I'm picturing a sweet old lady or a sweet old man in Wales speaking Welsh and basically being so horrified and so embarrassed that their old TV was causing the entire village to lose internet that they promised not to use the TV again. That is so sweet. Imagining that little old man or old lady, or it could have been a nerd like us who went to the Goodwill or the secondhand shop and found a cool old retro TV. It was like, I'm going to use this for my old video games. Could have been that. If I lived in that village of Wales, it would probably be me. Man, if there's problems with the internet, they would probably go, oh, Hamburger's probably doing something with an old Atari or something like that. But I'm giving benefit of the doubt and just kind of odds that it's probably an older person just use an old TV because they didn't want to get a newfangled brand new TV and work out all the functions when they knew how to turn a knob and pull a knob and do a dial. That's who I'm imagining here. But why it's funny to me, one of the funny parts to me is that I imagine this being a rural town in the United States. And I'm going to be very specific in like kind of pinpoint a location. Let's pick some sort of stereotypically backwoods place in Mississippi or Alabama or Georgia somewhere. 400 people, let's say it's a trailer park. And again, I'm painting a very specific picture here. But I think most Americans listening to this will kind of understand where I'm getting at. A little town of 400 people that's relying on DSL, and one of the residents is causing the internet outage by turning on their old TV. And you have the cable company come knock on their door. They found out who it is, and they say, hey, your TV is causing the entire town to go without internet while you're watching it. They would tell them that. In the response of the rural American, as opposed to the rural Welsh person, the rural American, I would not be surprised if they give two giant double-barreled middle fingers to the cable company, to the internet company, and said, get the F off my property. You are infringing on my freedoms to enjoy my TV the way I want. Get out of here before I shoot you on sight. I just imagine that in the United States, in a similarly sized town, that the response wouldn't be that the homeowner was embarrassed. The immediate response would be that the homeowner would be standoffish and claim that the cable company is infringing on their rights. And this is their right to watch their TV how they want to. They don't care how it affects other people. Because doggone it, that is one of the most American frames of mind possible. And I'm not getting political here, but it's just the difference. I can't imagine that situation going down the same way in the United States as it went down in Wales. Or at least it's funny to think it wouldn't. It 100%, of course, depends on who you're asking. Absolutely. Maybe 9 out of 10 people, maybe 9 out of 10 Americans, if you told them, hey, your thing here is interfering with everybody else's well-being. Maybe 9 out of 10 Americans be like, oh, I'm sorry about that. Let's figure out a way to fix this. But there is a certain demographic of people that you can find that if you went on their property to tell them something they're doing is affecting other people, they would tell you to get bent. And they would start waving the don't tread on me flag and talk about it's their GD American right to do whatever they want on their own property. The concept to that person that they might want to think about the well-being of their neighbor over themselves is just completely foreign. That person might take that incentive to turn on that TV and leave it on 24 hours a day and then crank the volume all the way up and then blast. Oh, gosh. Blast music throughout the neighborhood to annoy their neighbors further. Sir, can you... we're private property. We want you to put a mask on. Can you just wear a mask before you come in here to shop? It's my right as an American not to wear a mask. Well, yes, that's true. That's true. On your own private property, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to wear the mask. But, sir, this is Walmart. This is private property, and we can tell you what to do if you want to use our facilities. Just like you have the right to tell your neighbor not to come into your house and take a dump on your living room carpet. It's the exact same thing. It's your property. You make the rules on your own property. It's our property. Please wear a mask, sir. If this is the most inconvenient thing in your life, I envy you, because that means you have not had a hard life. If wearing a mask for 20 minutes while you're grocery shopping for Bud Light and Cantaloupe and Lucky Charms and milk, wearing a mask for that 15, 20 minutes is the hardest thing you've ever had to do, and that is an infringement of your rights. Then Jiminy Christmas. Jiminy Christmas. Let's move away from that. Moving on to the final topic. I have been on the lookout for a new tablet and a new smartwatch, like a fitness tracking smartwatch. My wife's birthday is coming up. I want to get her a new fitness tracking watch, and if she listens to this, it's fine. We've talked about it, because I asked her last night, "Babe, what do you want for your birthday?" And we had to think about maybe a new tracking watch. Maybe hers screen is kind of cracked a little bit. I think she has a Fitbit or something. It's a little long in the tooth. She's had it for a while. So it's got me on the hunt for a smartwatch. And so I'm going through that. I think I've whittled it down to a few contenders. Galaxy Fit, maybe. We'll see. And I'm not giving anything away, babe, if you're listening to this, because I haven't settled on anything. I'm in the hunt for that. If any of you listening have a good recommendation for a smartwatch, I've been loving my Samsung Gear S2 since, geez Louise, 2014? Like 6 years, 5 or 6 years, 2015. I've had this Gear S2, and it's been great. It's been great. There's things I'd like to change about it. There have been dozens of new Samsung smartwatches since then, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm not in the market for a smartwatch. Gear S2 is working just fine. But there are certainly new models, and that's what I'm thinking for my wife. We both have Android smartphones. That's important, because if you're gonna say get an Apple Watch, well, that's not gonna help, because we don't currently have any iPhones. Who knows, that might change in the future. I don't know. We'll see. So I'm in the search for a smartwatch or fitness tracking watch for her. It's probably, I'm leaning towards going with a Samsung product, because we already own, just keep it in the same ecosystem. You get all the more use out of it if you keep things in the same ecosystem. But I'm looking for a tablet right now. My wife's iPad, what the heck did she have? iPad mini or whatever it was. I think she's had it, she said, since like 2012 or 2013, which is ancient for an iPad, ancient for a tablet, period, not just an iPad. So I'm looking, I just fairly recently bought an iPad 6th generation or 7th generation. I bought it in 2018. It was new in 2018, which is still pretty modern. And I use it every single day, and it's been great. It's a 9.7-inch iPad, 6th gen or 7th gen, I forget exactly. But it's a great iPad. So I asked her, hey, do you want to just have my iPad? All I ever use it for is to listen to Trailer Park Boys podcast when I go to bed, and play, what do I play on it? Simple Planes. I don't use it that often. I use it, well, whatever. It's loved. Lightly loved. I asked her, well, would you want to just, if you just need an iPad, you want to use my iPad? Yeah, then I'll go get, instead of us having 2 iPads, I've wanted to get a new Android tablet. So if you just want a replacement iPad, this one is pretty new, and I will go out and see if I can get I don't need a new Android tablet. So this is where I'm getting at. Here's the meat and potatoes here. No way in holy sweet Hades am I going to get a Samsung Galaxy Tab S7 or S7 Plus or even an S6. Those things cost darn near $1,000. I think you can get a Galaxy Tab S7, not even the S7 Plus, for it's like $650 is like the lowest. And the lowest configuration is like $650. I'm not doing that for a tablet. For the iPad that I bought, I spent $329, and that didn't count for the cover that I got for it. But I spent $329. A tablet, to me, I already have powerful devices. It's not something that is going to be a desktop or a laptop replacement. It's always going to be a supplemental device. But also, I'm not going to get the cheapest piece of crap Android tablet out there. And it's hard with Android tablets. It's hard to, there's not much out there as far as Android tablets compared to Apple. I will concede that iPads, just dollar for dollar, and just usability across the board, it's hard. There's no better tablet than an iPad for the same price. For around $300, the iPad is going to kick an Android tablet's, for pardon the French, ass at that price point. Big time in every benchmark. For about $350, you're going to get so much more power and usability and just a smooth experience going with an iPad. They are Apple is the tablet champions. That doesn't mean that there aren't other things important to me, though. And as I use the iPad, I still wish every day that I could just put that the file system was better. The file system has gotten better, yes. But I wish it was expandable. I just want to put a micro SD card in there and expand my storage by 400 gigabytes. And I want to put my emulators on there. And yes, without jailbreaking, without doing all that rigmarole like you need to do with an iPad, because yes, you can run emulation on an iPad. I'm not sure as of recording right now that iOS 14 or iPad OS 14 has been jailbroken. Probably not, but somebody probably will. Anyway, it's a pain in the butt to get emulators to run on the iPad, which sucks because the iPad would run them so great. And the screen is wonderful. But it became more apparent to me the more I use the iPad, and as much as I love using the iPad for content consumption and web browsing device, it's like, man, I really just wish I could just be running an NES emulator at Super Nintendo, PSP, PS1, Dreamcast, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, all of that. Sega, I wish I could just have all the emulators on here like I have on my phone. My phone is a Galaxy Note 9. I have all the emulators on there, all of them, and it pairs up perfectly to my Xbox controller and my little 8-bit DOE controller that I keep in my pocket at all times. It's glorious. And I just wish I had that capability on my tablet, which means that if I want to do that on a tablet, you have to get an Android tablet. You have to. If you don't want to be jailbreaking all the time and keeping current with jailbreaking. One of the caveats, I'll just explain it for those who don't know what the big deal is with jailbreaking. One of the caveats with jailbreaking is that, yes, you can jailbreak, but that means you cause usability issues elsewhere. For instance, when it comes time for important apps to update, let's say an Apple app, let's say you're listening to iTunes or you're doing whatever, some sort of Google app or whatever, an important app in the Apple Store. At a certain point, it needs a certain software update in order to update the app. So if you jailbreak, let's say at 14.0, and you just want to stay there because you're not certain when the next jailbreak is coming, now when you want to download an app from the App Store, it's going to be looking for 14.01, but you were still stuck on the jailbroken 14.00. That means you run into the possibility that you can't update apps if you want to stay jailbroken. It's just a mess. It's just a pain in the butt that I didn't need, that I don't want, that I don't like. It's the only thing that I don't like about the iPad. The only thing is that I can't do what I want to do within Apple's walled garden without jailbreaking. Versus on the Android, you can download APKs out the wazoo. You can do whatever you want with the tablet, mostly, for the most part. Getting emulators on an Android tablet, on a Samsung tablet, is nothing. Just download the emulator right from the Play Store. Put some ROMs on an SD card. There you go. You're emulating. You're playing Donkey Kong Country on your tablet with an Xbox controller, and it's the best thing ever. It's much easier to do in the Android ecosystem. So, my wife is cool. She is cool to get my tablet, get my iPad, and then so that leaves me looking for an Android tablet. Now, the price point is going to be, I'm setting for myself about $300 or below. Not getting the Samsung Tab S7, not even getting a Tab S6. I'm not so sold on the 5e. The Samsung Tab 5e, and Tab 6S Lite is a step down from the 5e. So I think, and if you want to give me your input on this, you know how to reach me. Geek Therapy Radio, just Google it, and the website and everything. There's Twitter. You can get at me. I think that I've settled on, as of now recording, and I'm subject to change my mind, I think I've settled on the Samsung Galaxy Tab S4. They can still be had for around and even under, if you want to go used, with maybe a blemish here or there, for under $300, and they are still quite capable tablet. They're quite capable tablets. Snapdragon 835 inside there, 4 gigs of RAM at least inside there. Still a gorgeous screen. S Pen, the AKG speakers with Dolby Atmos. It's still an awesome tablet. There might be people listening to this right now. Some of you listening right now, you might be listening on a Galaxy Tab S4. Came out a couple years ago. It's still perfectly viable today, still gets updates, and the price is right. And it's a flagship tablet. It was a flagship back when it came out a couple years ago. So rather than go with a cheap kind of budget version, I will just get the flagship from a couple years ago. That's exactly what I've done with phones, other than my Note 9. I got the Note 9 when it was flagship, knowing fully well that it's going to last me for several years because phones just don't excite me. I don't need to go into that anymore in this episode. That I've mentioned it a million times before. Smartphones, by and large, don't shiver my timbers. So I'm thinking the same way with an Android tablet. I wish to the holy of holies that NVIDIA still supported the NVIDIA Shield and that NVIDIA released another Shield tablet. Holy crap, I would be first in line if NVIDIA ever released a new Shield tablet, but they're not going to. They likely will never do it because the last Shield tablet is called the Nintendo Switch, and they're just not going to pour energy and resources into making another Shield tablet. I would love to eat my words on that. But it's just not happening. And the Shield tablet came out 2014. The one I have, I've got the original Shield tablet, not the K1 kind of budget upgraded version. As soon as NVIDIA started dating Nintendo, they completely gave the middle finger to the Shield tablet. There's not been an update to that since like 2018, and that was some sort of security thing. There's no feature update. It can lag terribly if you don't have it set up just right. It can lag. Forget about having widgets being updated all the time, and emails go. It's gonna lag unless you just use it purely as like an emulation device. And even then, modern tablets still have long since outpaced the chip inside of the Shield tablet. Still a great tablet. It would still be amazing if NVIDIA still supported it, but they don't. Which means that I'm looking for a new Android tablet, and I think that I've settled on the Tab S4. Is that a good choice? Is there something else out there that you think I should know about? Let me know. GeekTherapyRadio.com and all the social media. Thank you so much for listening to Geek Therapy Radio. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of giving love. You are worthy of receiving love. And you are worthy of your own self-respect. Thank you all for listening. I love you all. Be so safe. And I'll talk to you next time.